Everyone wants to get to the high places, but if you want to go high, you first have to go deep.
All right, what's up? Welcome back to the deep end. We're going to be talking about something very, would you call it intense?
Probably a little bit
intense.
intense.
Burnout. And what do you do when you feel like you don't have enough energy for the task at hand? I'm here with Jake. Obviously, everybody knows you now. You're a big deal, let's be honest.
We make each other big deals, man.
You sometimes I feel like I'm being, I'm the second fiddle sometimes.
You're at the mercy.
Speaking of burnout, we just got back from a crazy, a bit of a tour. Like we had 7 events inside of a week and a half.
Mm-hmm.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I got back last week and just kind of crashed on the weekends where I tried not to do anything. So if you ever want to really test the boundaries of your discipline, just try not to do anything for a couple of days. Oh man, it's almost harder to not do something when you're trying not to do something, because then you just, after a couple of hours, you just feel a little bit like guilty or something wrong. Like you get fidgety and anxious, and
you have to go watch the rest episode of the deep end.
Yeah, binge daily mind medicine.
Basically.
Speaking of, dude, Daily Mind Medicine is a great show. I think people should follow that. It's pretty much every day. Like I created Daily Mind Medicine for actually my team in 2020. And I kid you not, since then, Jake can attest to this, I've tried to quit 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've successfully quit 2 times. And the last time, so every time this happens, somebody will find me somehow, like in either DMs or they'll come to me at an event, and they'll be like, I needed that show. And I'm like, well, sorry, I'm busy, And then the Holy Spirit will be like, who told you to quit that? And I'm like, well, listen, Holy Spirit, like, have you seen my calendar? He's like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know your calendar. This is so funny how, like, I will just argue with, I don't know if this is a good thing or bad thing, but so I'm sometimes find myself being argumentative with, like, God asked me to do something, and I'm like, well, here are all the reasons why you shouldn't ask me to do that. Which I would imagine a lot of people probably fall into that. Don't judge me. Listen, okay, so just stop judging me for a second. The last time I quit Daily Mind Medicine, literally the next week, I'm at an event. One person comes up to me and say, I feel like I was praying this morning and God told me to come talk to you about why you keep quitting this show. And I was like, well, that's pretty clear. And then a couple of hours later, another person came up to me and they were like, where's Daily Mind Medicine? It stopped. And I was like, okay, I get the point. Understood. I will never quit again. And it's not that I stopped it because I don't like it. It's just, dude, it's kind of a lot of work to record every single day something new.
Yeah.
So think about, like, dude, preachers are preparing a message every week.
Yep.
And we have arena that's every week. I've got calls. I mean, we're probably doing a couple hours a week of coaching.
Yeah.
But to record a daily audio every single day, it can't be a blueprint or a copy of yesterday. It's a pretty intense thing.
Yeah. You know what that made me think of?
What?
When you there's a clip that we put out the other day. You actually talked about it with Cody Jefferson a couple weeks ago. You guys talked about how most business owners are better disciplers than most pastors. It's amazing to me that you don't have a team meeting once a week and you just talk at them for 45 minutes and then expect their week to be perfect. But instead you're making content for your team and allowing other people to come in. And then when people come to your events, like, the number one thing people say is, like, they're healthy, they're happy. Yeah. I literally walked into your event last week and I almost told you this, but I was like, no, I don't want you to think we're going too hard into this frame. But I felt like I was at church. I walked into the event and everyone was, like, smiling. Like, it's, you know how, like, when you look at church and sometimes people feel like they have to force a smile?
Yep.
That's how it felt at the event. Like, in a good way. Like, everyone was just naturally happy to be there. People were talking about God. Like, it was a business event.
Yeah.
And it felt more, in a way, like church than most churches do.
Check this out. I'm going to read a post real fast from Brendan in Chamber.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I saw him at church on Sunday because I was playing. That's another thing. I got back from 7 events and Lindsay's like, hey, you're rostered to play on Sunday. I was like, oh my gosh. Which playing is like, I was at church for 8.5 hours. And it's awesome and I love it, but I was so tired. I was like, okay, fine. I made a commitment when we moved to Nashville and sort of got plugged back in. I made a commitment. I told God, like, I'm here for my church. I'm plugged into the local church. And so anytime they ask me to do something, if I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to kind of like pick and choose what I say yes and no to based on what fits me. So I've honored that and I've held to it. But I saw him walking through, like during the middle of the second song or something, he was walking through church. And I just, for whatever reason, I just looked right at him and I was like, that dude is really well dressed. It's like what hit my head.
Yeah.
And it was Brendan from Chamber.
Perfect.
Who was always immaculately dressed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just noticed. And then he posted this. I'm going to read this to you because I think this speaks to what you're saying. He said, yo, I have something a little different this morning that I'm reflecting on. The long story short, this is just a long-winded thank you and shout out to Taylor Welch for being dope. Then he goes into it. He says, I catch myself far too often where, you know, I'm thinking about something, but I don't say it. So I'm thinking about somebody, I don't share it. There's a lesson here as well. Like, it's not a bad idea to just occasionally, even right now, like if you feel so inclined, pause this video and text someone that you care about and tell them that you care about them. Because I think sometimes we forget, we get busy and we just text your wife, text somebody that you love, text them that you're thinking about them and that you care about them. It's amazing how this will just fill someone up.
Oh yeah.
You know? And so anyway, he says, the truth is this group has done a lot for me and for Joel, but in a very different and unexpected way than I thought. We joined Chamber at an interesting time in our lives, and looking back, we had a one-dimensional perspective and expectation of how it would help us. Because people join Chamber usually for a business. But you can't fix the business till you fix the person. And this just is the story of my life, where it's like, if I add revenue to your business right now, it will devastate you because you're not ready for that.
Yep.
So we joined Chamber to help us grow our successful business, but God had other plans, as he so often does. That doesn't mean his business didn't grow. It just means that we fixed other things first, which is another God thing. Sometimes you can tell that God's in something because he's more focused on the order than he is the outcome.
Yeah. This is an important time to point out. You're not a podcaster. You're a business owner.
Yeah, I'm like
this isn't your main thing that you do.
That's why you have to be here or else I don't even know how to turn this on.
Right.
I've called you before and I'm like, dude, I don't know how to turn the camera on. And you're like, here's a loom. You just push this little button. Dinky dink. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. He says, as Taylor, as you continue to step out in boldness, talking about the things that no one else will talk about, that most aren't equipped to talk about, it's called me personally into a new season. A new season of my faith, a new season of belief, and a new season where I'm equipped with tools, power, and authority. So what I actually got from Chamber was growth and maturity in my walk with the one who actually matters. Have you read this post yet? The funny thing, and this is very on brand for you, is that the business growth started to happen as well, but as a byproduct. As we've begun to step into the wholeness of what God's calling us to, doors started opening. Doors that we had been waiting for years to open. Doors that we were starting to actually lose sight of, almost fading away in the distance as the gap between where we thought we were and where we wanted to go seemed to grow greater and greater. But God's always bigger than that, and the size of the gap in the spiritual realm is irrelevant. It's just freaking packed with gold. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being used as a listener of God's voice, for being obedient, and for doing the hard stuff, and for talking about the different topics. He says, this feels kind of like when you got your first car. That freedom and belief that you can do anything, except this time it's the undeniable truth. We can do anything because of who we're attached to. I was like, this is one of the coolest posts that I've seen from the group, because he got the business growth, but he got it on the other side of what really mattered, which was health. So anyways, today we're going to talk about burnout. And specifically, is burnout a sin? Is burnout, because we talk a lot about, we had a really good conversation yesterday. You're like, Taylor, why don't you talk about homosexuality? Why don't you talk about adultery? And why don't you talk about sin? And I think maybe there was a part of you that was maybe concerned that I didn't care about it, or how did that conversation open up?
No, I just came at it from the perspective of I know your heart and I trust your character. Like your character says so much about what you believe that I don't really have to question it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do sometimes wonder, like sometimes we were talking about this, you operate sometimes at just like you think at a much higher level that what you're saying at this level makes zero sense. So sometimes if I'm not open to it, I'll just reject it. And then 6 months later, it will hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was curious on just your thinking process on how do you see sin? Why aren't you talking about it? Why aren't you speaking up more on it? Or why aren't you just kind of calling certain spades at certain times?
Yeah.
And just trying to understand your thinking patterns, honestly.
Got it. So if we diagnose my definition of sin, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sin is any belief or activity that disagrees with God or how God has instructed us to believe or to act. So I've been in seasons of my life where I felt insecure,
Mm-hmm.
or seasons of my life where I felt like things were closing in on me and I had to figure something out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, both of those beliefs would be classified in my book as sin.
Yep.
It's not just cheating on your spouse or killing someone or, whatever. It's anything that it disagrees with what God is telling you or
Mm-hmm.
saying to you or instructing you to do. So if the problem is like, I think if we were to start talking about sin, it'd be like, well, you just sinned in this conversation. Like everything becomes
Right, and I think we want to talk about the big things because we think that if we say enough of the big things, we judge a lot of other people, and then we feel better about ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're not doing it to that extreme. But if we really dial it back, if we still have an all holy God that's set apart from everything, it means like literally any deviation is sin. So we have to I don't think we understand the severity of it. And so when we just talk about the big stuff, we're trying to almost excuse ourselves.
I think it's actually we overestimate the severity of it. Because you can sin and still be blessed.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes like we'll try to keep this on. I think we'll try to keep it on pace with energy because I think there are people that watch our content that are kind of like, okay, whatever.
Oh, for sure.
Talk about God, but I want the meat and potatoes of like.
Yep.
You see in a video like this is talking about burnout. Is burnout a sin? Like, how do I avoid burnout? Keep the Jesus stuff. Okay, fine.
Yep.
When it comes down to it, let's run diagnostics for a minute on like, how do you know if you are burned out? What is burnout?
What happened to you? How have you experienced it?
Well, I burn out all the time. I mean, I'm like constantly fighting burnout. Burnout is any time where you feel like your available energy is inferior to the task at hand. So if we want a clinical definition of burnout, like I think people misanalyze burnout because when you are like, let's say you're like running, you're training for a marathon. Like Cole Taylor is training for like a 100-mile run, and he started this year. He just started training. He's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it.
Wait, didn't he try it last year and he only got to like didn't he get to like mile 63 and he couldn't, and then he had to do it again?
Hopefully that's true.
I remember seeing Facebook posts.
Funny.
He got so far. It was great.
When you're training for something, like you're technically burning out the entire way through because that's how the body grows. So the body grows when like the body is lacking enough musculature, energy, resources to perform at the level that you expect it to perform. This is how muscle grows. This is how, we put on, we've talked about this before, Mithridatism and the biological idea of like, how do you grow something? You break it. How do you grow it? You break it. With a business, how do you grow a business? Well, you break it. And then you build the system that fixes the breakage. And as you do that, it comes back stronger, right? So I did this talk and I'll share some of it here, but real burnout that you have to worry about is not just running out of energy, although that's a form of burnout. The burnout that we have to watch out for is when our recovery programs are not working anymore. So for example, have you ever worked like a really long week and you get to the end of the week and you're like, thank God it's Friday. I can't wait for tomorrow.
100%.
You go through Saturday, Sunday, you feel really good and you can bounce back into the next week with energy.
Yep.
So this, you're sort of burning out and then you recover over the weekends.
Yeah.
Where people get trapped and stuck is they'll take the weekend and they don't recover. So their recovery programs are failing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I call this energy cycles. We've trained tons of people on this
Mm-hmm.
from all the way back in like 2016, 2017. So my personal recovery program looks like this. It's 3-day weekends once a month. It is a extended getaway once a quarter. So it's like 4 to 5 days. Like you can call this a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually some form of prolonged, like 2-week-ish, 2 to 4 weeks once a year. And if you're listening to this and you're like, well, that sounds amazing, bro. Like a week vacation every quarter. Yeah, it's because I'm burning through energy.
Yeah.
Running multiple companies, nonstop,
Right.
2 kids, church, friends. So it's like the more output you have, the more recovery you're going to have. Because perfect development is when there's an equal amount of energy expenditure and energy recovery.
Mm.
Now, if you over expend your energy and you don't have ample recovery, then you're just going to break and you can get stuck there. That's the burnout that is long lasting, and that's the burnout that will hurt you. But the flip side of that is equally as dangerous, where you have not enough expenditure, you're over recovering, and then what happens there? Your muscles atrophy.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the gym and you're consistent and then you stop working out for 3 months, you just reset back to the place you were before you started working out.
Yeah.
So this is a spectrum that we have to manage, a tension we have to manage. It's not a burnout's bad. The opposite of burnout is good. No, the opposite of burnout is just boredom, where you're atrophying.
I was going to say, what does capacity have to do with burnout? Because one of the things I've seen, especially with a high performer, is that you'll stretch your capacity, and the things that used to burn you out, you have the capacity, so they no longer stress you out.
Yeah.
And so if you don't fill them out, you become bored, and then that's what happens there. And if you stretch out and then you refill it with something else that's challenging that causes you to stretch again, then you burn out. So how does capacity play into burnout?
Capacity increases by blowing past your capacity. And the more you do that, the bigger your capacity gets.
Which is why somebody just had a FedEx truck go by. That's why somebody at a FedEx could be just as exhausted as you, running a massive company with hundreds of people under your wing. If you do something wrong, it causes their life to go wrong. You can have the same level of burnout as that person. Why? How do you explain that?
Because our capacities are different.
How do you change that?
You could blow past your capacity.
Thank you. Classic Taylor Welch answer right there.
You blow past your capacity. So the event that we spoke at, they're like, teach us how to avoid burnout. And I was just kind of like, no, I don't want to teach you that, because that's actually teaching you how to stagnate. So if all we ever do is avoid burnout, then we're just a stagnating pond. Like our capacity is never expanding. So burnout is actually very important.
Yeah.
You have to get to that place where you feel like you have nothing left for your capacity to increase. Right?
So the burnout induces the rest, which forces the ability to re-expand for the next season?
Technically not. The burnout doesn't always induce the rest.
Okay.
The burnout actually expands capacity, so that the next time you're at the same capacity, you have developed higher levels of management and you can do more than you could do the last time. It's no different than so my son is 1 and he's learning to walk right now.
Yeah.
He's actually quite good.
Yep.
But he falls into stuff and he doesn't know what he's doing still.
Yep.
So the way that you learn how to walk is you fall. And then every once in a while you do something stupid. In Harrison's case, he jumps off a couch. And you learn through that physical pain how to not jump off the couch, or better yet, how to jump off the couch the right way. We have to do that in life. But in life, the difference is with my son, it's not wrapping into his identity. So he's not thinking in his head, well, I will never be able to jump off of this couch. I'm a horrible couch jumper, or whatever that means. He's not warping his identity to match his circumstances. He's just, well, let's try again, but let's adjust. In life, what happens is we'll get to a season of burnout. We won't process it well. And so what happens is our identity becomes warped, and it warps down to the level of our circumstances. So you have
Can
a
you explain that a
business.
little bit?
Yeah, let's say you have a business and that business is going well, but it gets big and then you're like overwhelmed and you can't manage all the moving pieces. And so the business, you just kind of break the business and you shut it down. Where the devastating effects of burnout happen is when you change your identity now to say, I am not good enough to run a business. It's not the burnout, it's the frame you carry with the burnout. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Can you bring that just back down to earth for just a second, then come back up?
Down to earth, how low? Like in the ground, you're gonna dig a
When
hole?
you say when you say words like frame, what does that look like? Practical examples.
Frame is the lens that you look at a situation through. So frame is the perspective you have. If you're running a business and it gets too big, the failure point has to be looked at through the lens of lessons. How do I take this and convert this failure into lessons? So the next time I can do it better. Where we mistake the process is, I've done this too, where I start carrying insecurity and I start carrying beliefs about myself that actually they're not real. But because I didn't turn the failure into a lesson, it gets printed into the blueprint as a failure. So there's really no such thing as, so like, let's say that you have a spectrum. So you have a line, just go with me. We don't have to do this in post, but just like, let's say you have a line over here, okay? When you have this graph of sorts, what you have on the right-hand side is like all of the available information that can possibly be known. What you have on the left-hand side of the line is no information at all. Okay? And so we exist in this spectrum. We're building a business, raising kids, getting married, starting a church, whatever it is we're doing. We have this line, no information, all of the available information. When you make decisions based on no information, you're gambling. When you wait to make decisions based on getting 100% of the information, you just lose the opportunity. All the opportunities are in the middle to the left or the middle to the right. So there's this small range in the middle where you have enough information to make a good hypothesis, but you don't have enough information to where it's guaranteed. That's where all of the opportunity is. It's in the middle. Everything to the left of center is predictive. You're just predicting. So here's a practical example. Have you ever been married before?
Not yet.
Okay. If you marry someone, you are predicting that you are marrying the right person. You don't really have any idea.
Yep.
You don't ever fully know. There's no such thing because you haven't been to the end of your life and figured it out.
Right.
If you talk to someone else who has been divorced or they were cheated on or abused or whatever, they predicted, but they have things in their predictive past that they have to be very careful about how they frame. Because what you don't want is someone who gets married, the marriage is abusive, and then they take that as a personal, like, I deserved this, or I don't have what it takes to be a good spouse, or I don't know how to select a good spouse, etc.
Right.
Everything to the left is predictive, so there's going to be a range of volatility in it. Everything to the right is training. You can call it prescriptive. It's prescribing new lessons to old seasons. We're way too up in the clouds right now. I'm sure I'll bring it down, but we have to do this because I can't just share an opinion. I have to go clinical on it. Everything to the right of the graph is going to go back and reprogram the predictive machine of how we make decisions. So let's forget marriage for a second. Let's say that you have a business partner.
Yep.
You ever had a business partner? Okay. You picked the wrong business partner. You have to make a decision about what that says about you. Is that going to say that you don't know how to make a good choice on decision or partners? Or are you going to say that you just needed the lessons necessary to pick the right partner in the future?
Right.
This is what I mean by frame. We get to decide what something means to us. Burnout, we take the same frame and we put it into a situation like burnout. We grow a church too fast. We grow a business the wrong way. We hire the wrong staff. What most people do is they sit inside of this frame of, that's my fault. And because it's my fault, I did something wrong, and therefore I can't trust myself to make decisions in the future. Can you see how that's damaging?
Yeah.
Rather than looking at a situation and saying, I just didn't have the right lessons to make the right decisions. That's a helpful frame. That will actually help people experience trauma the right way. It'll help you experience failure the right way. And so burnout is not a thing that I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to bump up against it, push it as if I can, and then recover, go back at it again.
Yep.
When you do this, you just take your capacity and you're slowly bumping your capacity up.
Yep.
So the question is not, how do I avoid burnout? The question is, what am I getting for the fatigue? What am I getting for the energy expenditure?
Yeah. And you've had moments in your life where you've gone way past it, right?
Is this too high or are we good?
This is good.
Yeah, I've had like 1,000 moments where I'm I'm way burned out.
So what happened? Because I remember you going through a season of, it seemed like you were burned out for almost like 7 or 8 months, if not a year, when you were going through the end of the old businesses those days. What happened?
The first time I really burned out was probably 2018.
Okay.
But real burnout. So there's levels to it. Level 1 burnout is just what we're talking about right now. Like capacity increases. You're just like, you're out of energy. You're tired. The kids are being terrorists. And you're just like, yo, I don't even want these kids anymore. I don't care about anything. That's relatively normal. Like, it's just kind of like,
Sure.
you go through cycles where you're exhausted.
Yeah.
But in 2018, I hit like level 2 burnout, which is like my recovery protocols were not working at all. So I would go on vacation and it wouldn't fix anything. And this is where I think you get into trouble. What happened with me, this was the first time I really recognized and noticed this, is I actually was so burned out that I didn't care about the outcome anymore. And I lost touch with why I was doing it. So if a normal form of burnout might just be run out of energy, but a really existential form of burnout is not just when you run out of energy. It's like, I'm not even getting anything for it. So I'm running out of energy, but I don't think it's a good trade.
Yeah.
So I was burned out on Saturday last week. Speaking for 9 hours in a week will do that. Then you come home, my kids want to see me.
Yeah.
I want to see them.
Yeah.
My wife needs help because she's held down the whole fort for 3 weeks and she's got a business. So she's like, yo, yeah, I know you're tired. You need to take Kate to dinner because she's crying every night because she hasn't seen you in 3 weeks. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to rally through this. Like shorter term burnout can just be rallied through as long as you know what you're getting for it. 2018 though, it was like, I don't even think that I'm getting any yield for this. So it's a waste. That's long-term burnout. And yeah, dude, like that was the first time I just didn't care about anything. I didn't really care about the business. And I just kind of was like, you guys are in charge and make good decisions. I'm going to take a couple of weeks and regroup. What's funny about that is when I did step out, the business grew because I wasn't in the middle burning things. It's like when you are really burned out, you're a liability, not an asset.
Why do you think you didn't catch it? Like you probably didn't realize you were burned out.
I didn't know how to. I think very few people know how to catch burnout before it happens. Because if they did, they wouldn't burn out.
So you were burning out your team, you were frustrating the team, business was like, you basically were holding back your own business and the people around you because of the way that you were and you didn't even realize it.
Because I had two conflicting commands going out from my subconscious. One was to grow the business. The other was like, okay, this business is going to kill me, shut down the business. So when you have two conflicting values at the same time, this happened just a couple of months ago. I was on a call with one of my one-on-one clients and his dad wasn't available at home. He didn't have a good relationship with his father. So one of his primary values is like, I'm going to be present for my kids. One of his other primary values was to build the business so that he can do stuff with his kids. These were conflicting because what he felt like is when the business got bigger, he couldn't spend as much time with his kids. But when the business was smaller, he couldn't afford the things he wanted to do with his kids. So you notice he has two values at the same time. When you send two values out to the world through your subconscious, the world doesn't prioritize one and devalue the other. The world tries to go get you both. And this is actually a catastrophe because what that looks like is For a month, the business would grow, then the business would decline, and he would spend more time at home. And then a month, the business would grow. And so what having two conflicting values looks like is spinning in circles. So if you're self-sabotaging, if you keep hitting this invisible barrier and you just touch it and then go back down, you've got two conflicting values. One value is pushing up to the barrier. The second value is pulling you back down. You go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And I had this going on with me. And that's why you can't catch it, because technically in both the 2 steps forward and the 2 steps backwards, you're checking off a value system on both sides. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Then in 2022, it was different. I sort of caught it and knew it was happening, but I didn't really feel like I had a choice. You know, like I was like, there are a lot of people depending on me. Burnout usually carries with it a sense of obligation, where if you're doing things that don't matter to you personally, you're doing it because it matters to someone else. It's quick burnout. It'll burn you out really quick.
Yep.
You're asking me about.
I was asking you about 2018, and basically there were good things that were supposed to happen that would have naturally happened, but since you didn't catch it early enough, basically the team was having a harder time than they should have. So.
Yeah, but would you say that I'm healthier now than I was in
100%. I think you've gotten to a place, and I've gotten to this place as well as a result of being able to see burnout as like, oh, this is a great thing. I'm tired. This is awesome. Great indicator. Rather than shoving it back and trying to push through it. And we talk this all, like, it's pretty similar to rest, but it's like the other piece before you get to rest. Because what you're saying is like, if you don't know you're burned out, okay, now you need to rest. And then if you don't know how to rest, which is the problem that you had, there's another episode that we did on that. But that's just as important, because for you to exert energy, you have to be able to figure out how do you go get energy back.
Yeah.
So,
how do you do that?
Huh?
How do you do that?
I don't know. That's why we're here with you, isn't it? Well, what happened this weekend? So you, funny enough, you and Lindsay actually had this episode, the episode with you and her will actually be out before this one does.
Okay.
So people will hopefully go watch that one as well. You guys talked about conflict resolution.
Yep.
You guys had some burnout problems. And then literally 3 days later, you get burned out. What happened?
We got in a big fight, and we had to practice like what we preached, and we didn't. So yeah, I mean that was Sunday night. We got in, like I took Kate to go do dinner. Lindsay was like, "How are you on energy?" And I said, "I'm like a 2 out of 10." Yesterday I was like a 0 or a 1.
Yeah.
Today I'm a 2. So I was at church all day. I've got a big week coming up. I'm not super good. Like I'm okay. I'm gonna take my daughter to dinner because if I can't do that, nothing else matters anyways. So let's do it. And I was sort of proud of myself for like rallying through, and I was fully present with Kate, but I was so tired, but I was like, I did it. So I texted Lindsay and I was like, Harrison's setting things on fire here at the house, like losing his mind. And she sends me a picture of him, and he's like just ripping things off of shelves, like being crazy. And I know that's an indication too that my wife is also tired, because anytime she's not like stopping him, but she's just taking videos of him, it's like, well, she's probably tired too. It was like,
yeah.
I remember when she left for a couple of days and I had to take care of the kids, and I just videoed him eating dog food. I was like, this is the only thing that he wants to eat, so I'm going to let him have it. And it's not hurting him. As long as it's not hurting him, like whatever, I don't have the energy. And so I texted her back and I said, divide and conquer. Like, we got this. And she was like, yeah, you're eating like queso and Mexican with Kate, and I'm dealing with the screaming 1-year-old. I don't think that it's like equal. But because I was so low on energy, I took that as like, you might as well have like set a bomb off next to me. Oh. And I took that as like, oh, we're at war right now. You want to fight? You don't think I contribute? You don't think I matter? You want to trade places? And I got antagonistic. And then she got antagonistic to defend herself from that, because it'd be like you texting me and being like, let's say you texted me and you're like, hey, I'm really not feeling well this morning. Yeah. I can't come over and shoot content.
Yeah.
And I texted you back immediately. I was like, you don't think I've ever not felt well? How adversarial
Like
is
zero
that?
empathy.
Like
Yeah.
zero.
100%.
But it's because what would you say? You would just be like, dude, what are you talking about? Like
Yeah.
you would not, you wouldn't know how to respond, and you'd probably be like, dude, back off, like settle down for a second.
Or I'd just be like, are you okay? Yeah.
Maybe.
That's how it usually goes.
Or you'd be like, I don't like it when you talk to me that way. You said that before.
I've had that happen before. Yep.
So we're both low on energy, and we just kind of get into it because my biggest insecurity with my family is that I'm not contributing enough. Her biggest insecurity is really that she's gonna be stuck as like a stay-at-home mom, and she can't contribute to her mission, and like she wants to write books, and she's got her salon, and so if I want to trigger her, if I want to like really trigger my wife, then I will just take cheap shots at her business because my business does like 100,000 million times more than hers does. And I'll just be like, you know, you made $1,000 this week. Congrats. It's nothing. Go buy a purse with it. We don't need it. That would be so mean because it's like isolating her insecurity and I'm taking cheap shots at it.
100%.
My insecurity is that when push comes to shove, my family will feel like I picked the business over them. And so what I felt like is that text was I didn't catch it as like my wife is just sort of tired and sort of making fun. She was sort of joking. She was like, "Oh yeah, you're eating queso. Like I would love to be eating queso right now." I took it as like an attack against my identity, a cheap shot. And we both doubled down, and then we went into just like, we're like, "Look, I love you, but I don't see the point in talking right now because I'm going to respond. I'm going to be reactive rather than be proactive." And you know, she came outside and she brought a piece of chocolate. She's like, I brought a peace offering. Let's talk about this. And dude, I was just a total. It was basically like, forget your chocolate. Like, who paid for that chocolate? Like, what's wrong with you? Not really, but I was angry. I felt like I had done all of this work to grow in a season of sprint. I told her it was happening. We were on the same page. And then when I kind of rallied, she was like, that rally is a joke, is how I perceived it. Even though that's not what she said. She didn't even say anything like that. It was me filtering through my burnout.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think you were lacking in that moment? Like I know energy is like the overall, but what do you think you were probably actually lacking that got you to that place of being more defensive? Because it sounds like there was almost like a lack, like a bit of a disconnect. Because you know Lindsay's heart, you know who she is, and she knows who you are. What do you feel like you were lacking? Because that's the only thing you could control.
Well, very rarely are we thinking about what's the other person's heart when we're like really tired and
100%, exactly. Yeah.
What I feel like I was missing is like I needed confirmation that the last 3 weeks were okay.
Yeah.
And not only did I not get that, probably I shouldn't have even needed that in the first place. Like we can go on a rabbit trail there too. Like why did I need that? But when you're low on energy, this is what happens when you're tired, everything is a crisis. So fatigue catastrophizes everything. Like it makes everything this existential crisis. This has probably happened to all of us. Like if you are really tired and it's late at night and you get a flat tire, it's like you think you're going to die. And there's a demon everywhere and you're like terrified and you're cursing the demons and you're like, why did God choose this night to kill me? I have more things to say. And it's like, yo, bro, hold on, chill out. You just need to go to sleep. You just need to get some recovery time. Or if you've had a really long sprint where you're like spending a lot of time with other people, you haven't been refilled yourself, and your spouse or someone says something, and it's normally not a big deal, but because you're in crisis mode, this is what happens when you're fatigued and in burnout, you're in crisis mode because your body's literally like, hey, hold on. You're drowning. So every single thing is heightened risk. Your fight or flight, you're picking up everything as a risk assessment. You're just constantly scoping like, is this going to kill me? Yes, run. Is it not? Neutralize it. And we're heightened. This is burnout 101. It's like makes everything a big deal. That's what I was missing. And the reality is like, honestly, Lindsay could have done some things different. I could have done some things different, but we both doubled down and we both fought on it. And, for a couple of days, like we had made up and we were good, but I still was sort of like holding her. This is interesting. This isn't about burnout, but I'm going to share it with you. Is that okay?
Go for it.
You know, you can forgive someone and still sort of not let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can be like, I forgive you, let's start over. But in your heart, you ain't starting over.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell this because you are keeping a record rather than burning the record.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what I did with Lindsay. I was like, I forgive you. We're good. And then Monday night, she wanted to have a conversation, and I was guarded.
Mm.
It was just kind of like, I'm keeping you in a spot so that you can't hurt me. So I didn't let her go.
Were you genuine? Like, this is something I was thinking about recently. Were you in a place where you were like, I forgive you, and you were wanting to, and you were like trying to speak it until your spirit would catch up? Or was this like, I forgive you, and you were like purposely like, but nah, like we're going to hold this?
It sounds like this. I forgive you, but it doesn't work that way.
Invalidate everything.
I forgive you, but you really hurt me. Well, you haven't forgiven them then. You haven't forgiven them. I forgive you, but I'm not going to talk to you about this. And so I had pseudo forgiven her because she asked for forgiveness. And I didn't ask for forgiveness, which in and of itself is not a state of forgiveness. Because when you fully let someone go, you recognize your own responsibility in the situation.
Right.
So Monday, Tuesday, both are just horrible days for me. I'm not recovering. I feel blocked. I'm out on a walk and I'm asking God about stuff and I'm not really hearing anything. And I'm like, well, in my head, I start getting actually angry at God because I'm like, dude, like I've been so obedient. Like I'm in this walk with God where like he tells me to do something, I do it. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I hadn't done anything wrong. Like, why won't you tell me what to do with the situation? And then last night, me and Lindsay started talking and she starts talking and she's like, you still feel like you're standoffish with me. Mm. And I'm like, no, I'm not. You just really hurt me. You know, I'm not standoffish. I just don't want to talk to you about, because she asked me, she's like, did you pray about this? Because we got something we're praying about. Mm. And I said, yeah, what did God tell you? And I was like, I don't really want to talk to you about it because it's vulnerable. Mm. It's a vulnerability for me to open up about these things. Even just this YouTube channel, like I'm talking about things that are very vulnerable. Mm-hmm. They don't, people could hurt me with it. Mm-hmm. Like they could, I don't know. It just feels not safe sometimes to talk about some of these things. Yeah. And she's like, all right. I said, it's getting close to bed. Let me go into the shower. And I go into the shower and this was last night. Is this still interesting or am I boring
This
you?
is great.
Okay. So it has literally nothing to do with burnout, but I'm like,
actually, it does. We'll bring it back.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the shower last night and I'm just like, God, thank you for the day. And Holy Spirit just goes, no. And I was like, okay. Not thank you for the day? Like, what do you want me to? And in my heart, Holy Spirit's like, you have not let her go. And I will never move through your unforgiveness. I won't talk through the barrier of your unforgiveness. And I was like, oh man, that's why I feel blocked. Because there's no unity. Mm-hmm. And so in my heart, I just fully let her go. And I texted her and I said, I'm sorry for Sunday. I'm sorry that I didn't let you go. I'm sorry for saying I forgive you, but not actually starting over. And we're good. And immediately, dude, it was like, it's like going from black and white to color. I know what you mean. Yeah. Like immediately I was like, oh, I can feel Holy Spirit again.
You can feel your body.
Feel your body.
Yep.
Like I literally went from like level 75 level of energy to like back up to 350, 400.
Yes.
And so there's something interesting in that where it's just like, you know, we're constantly like walking around and there are areas where it's like, we want God to talk to us. We want God to speak to us. And God's like, look, I won't move through your inability to let someone else go. Yeah. Like I just choose not to. It's a spiritual principle. And it's amazing how many times in my life, my lack of energy, lack of resources, lack of connection have actually been a byproduct of me being offended and carrying that offense around with me. Mm. And then it happens so long, we carry it so long that we forget what we're offended by. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to ask the Holy Spirit, hey, if I'm carrying offense, please tell me where that is. If I'm carrying a belief, please show me where that is. And what's amazing about it is like he loves to talk to you about it. So he'll literally, this happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I can share that story. I think you heard part of it at the mixer last week about being delivered from fear. After I'd already spoken a podcast on being delivered from fear.
Yeah.
And that was one of those moments. Was like, show me where I'm carrying a belief system that is blocking my ability to access your energy.
Correct.
Because it's not just about you. In fact, dude, long-term burnout actually is a sign of self-reliance. If the devil can't physically hurt you, he'll just make you really busy. It'll make you so busy that you start relying on your own recovery programs to try to fill back up. And that becomes idolatrous because then you're depending on you, you're not depending on God. It's long-term burnout. So yeah, that happened a couple weeks ago where I was at, show me where this happened, and he did. And we can go into that if you want to. But back to the topic of burnout.
Well, I was going to ask, so you asked the question in the beginning, is burnout a sin? And you've talked about its self-reliance. So what would you say your view is on that? Is burnout a sin, or is it just a big cause, like the byproduct of burnout can be? Like, what's your thought process on that?
I think the times we go where we're expending too much energy, the sin is where we begin to live in that place. So it's not, if God gives you a dream, it's going to be a really big dream and you're going to have no idea how to figure it out. So I think some people think that I'm going to write a book, probably not this year, maybe not next year either, but it's called God Dreams Are Big Dreams. So if you want a diagnostic test on how to know a dream is from God, it will require you to reprogram your identity to match what God says about you. So if you can make your way to the target by yourself, it's probably not a God dream. That doesn't mean it's a bad dream. It just means it's not, God has not probably given that to you. When God gives you something, it's usually, wow, okay, that's impossible. I don't really know how to do that, which is what God loves, because that's the point. Like you don't know how to do it. That's the point. Like you can't figure it out. You can't use your own, like intellect and interpretation to figure it out. And Deuteronomy talks about this. Deuteronomy 8:17 and 18. It talks about how God's saying, I did this so that no one else could say that you did it on your own. So now, verse 18, don't ever forget that God's the one that gives you the ability to create wealth, to prosper, and so fulfill my covenant. So God has a covenant with you that you will prosper. Don't be calling me a prosperity gospel preacher. Call me just someone who reads the Bible. It's literally right there in the Bible. So when God says, I am the one who gives you the ability to create wealth and so confirm my covenant, we literally have a covenant with God that everything God has access to, we have access to. All the energy God has, we have access to it. All the assets God has, we have access to it. That's what that literally means. And so that has to apply to this conversation, because last I checked, God don't run out of energy.
And he chose to rest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The burnout that is sin is when we get through the sixth day and we choose not to rest. That's the sin. The sin is not that we have overexerted our energy, because sometimes God will call you to do that. I'll ask you to do that.
Yep.
The sin is when I got to that point and I'm disobedient with the recovery. And then you go from a temporary, it's a busy season, to a destructive, long-term. I'm operating in my own strength. I'm not following the rules. I'm not being obedient with, when God tells me to do nothing and shut my mouth, I'm speaking anyways. When God tells me to go on this trip, I'm not going on it. And there is where we lose access through our own intellectual capabilities. We lose access to that covenant. Everything God has access to, I get access to. And this is why it's one of the most amazing strategies. Like, I've heard people sit on both sides of the fence with the devil. And some pastors are like, the devil's, Satan and the demons, like, they got a lot of power. You got to respect how everything works. And then you live in fear of the demonic. I think that's stupid. And then some people are like, the devil's a loser. He's just an idiot. It's like, okay, well, he's been around for like hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years.
Yeah, exactly.
He's probably not retarded.
No.
So we got to think about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is in the middle,
Yep.
where he's a strategist. And so if I've got Jake right here, and let's say my mission is just to destroy Jake, but I'm not allowed to touch you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't shoot you. I can't mess with your stuff.
Yep.
I can't physically assault you. The only strategy that I have that will work is I've got to convince you somehow to destroy yourself. And through manipulation, one of the ways he does that, especially with people in ministry, he will just make you as busy as possible, because that busyness will choke out the voice of Holy Spirit. And fatigue makes everything bigger than it is. And it makes everything a crisis that you have to respond to. And then over time, if you do that long enough, like a year, 2 years, 3 years, you get someone who is very close to Jesus. Now they're so busy that they just want to quit everything, and they're not even listening anymore.
All because one lie got mixed in with the truth.
Yeah, that's how the most
Oh, you're
effective
doing
lies.
this for God. You should keep going.
Yeah.
That's where they talk about where you maybe squeeze the orange a little too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like you weren't supposed to, like, they're like, oh, I made $1 million. But they were like, I knew I wasn't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Like I made more money than I was supposed to. And that's why you talk about it always, you end up having to pay it all back. Because then you like lost how much time trying to recover from that.
Yeah.
Like you're pacing.
You sent me a video from someone who used to go to the church and now they don't, and they're frustrated that certain pastors on the church are going to Europe and spending money.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't understand the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't understand it. He's experienced his own burnout and has failed to rest.
Mm-hmm.
When you go through this and you've been disobedient, you will judge other people who are obedient. When you've been through something and you handled it the wrong way, you will judge other people who handled it the right way. When you have been a bad friend, you will judge other friends who are being a good friend. When you go through something and you feel tremendous pain because you didn't do it right, or maybe you did do it right, sometimes you'll judge and take cheap shots at other people because they're not experiencing the same dysfunction that you are. This happens in relationships all the time. As I had a lot of friends when I was starting out that I'm still acquaintances with, but they don't have access to my life anymore.
Yeah.
Because at different points along the road, I would make a choice that I'm going to be obedient here, I'm going to level up here, I'm going to go for something bigger here. And big goals will always frustrate and offend the friends around you who have small goals.
Mm-hmm.
And obedience will sometimes frustrate the people around you who are disobedient. And so what you have here is like you have an example of people who are running a movement and they're very tired and it's time for them to take a break. Well, man, all the people who didn't take a break are offended that these people are taking a break because they didn't do it right. And I think that this is a mistake. This is a problem, you know? So.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. I was just asking myself, I was like, what types of stories in the Bible where you kind of see this coming? Like when people talk about you're prepared for like the God dream or whatever, like Joseph goes through that again and again.
Prepared?
What do you mean?
No one's prepared.
No, but God knows what it takes to prepare you. You don't think you're ready, but God knows you're ready.
Yeah.
Like same thing with Moses. Like there's this capacity that's being opened. Moses is used to the government of Egypt. And then all of a sudden he's like the greatest solopreneur of all time. And then he gets burned out because he's a solopreneur for too long. And Jethro is like, you should learn how to like actually delegate some of this stuff. It's classic.
Here's how it really works. God gives you the dream first and then he prepares you.
Yeah.
And that's worse. That's harder. That's harder.
Yeah.
Because what happens to someone when they are given a dream and they see it, and then they like David was given that. He was given that and then it didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So like David was said, anointed as king, and then the king tried to kill him. And he's living in a cave. And he's like, yo, this is very different from what God told me was going to happen. Joseph gets the dream, then he's in prison, then he's in another prison. Very different. It's a good thing when your life looks very different from what God promised you.
Mm.
And the more different it looks, it's the greater you're being prepared for it.
Mm.
But that's harder because we have to eventually cross this threshold where we choose to believe what God said more than we believe the circumstances, what the circumstances say about us. It's really easy when people are like, man, God called me to do this. He called me to give $1 million to this organization, and then my business grew by $10 million. It's like, well, good for you. I hate you. It's not how it ever worked for me.
Yeah.
It's not how it worked for Nehemiah, and it's not how it worked for David. It's not how it worked for Moses, or it's not how it worked for Jesus. It's not how it ever works. Nehemiah is like, God's like, go build these walls. And then his people are having to build walls with swords and shields on them because people are trying to kill them while they're building the wall. It looks different. It doesn't look the same.
Yep.
And what the process of being prepared for is really not about preparing you necessarily. I don't think that preparation is truly preparing you. I don't think you're getting necessarily like, Joseph wasn't getting smarter in the prison. He wasn't getting educated in the prison. It wasn't like Joseph is not ready. What a lot of people think it looks like is God will tell you to do something, and then the pain is you being developed and grown into that. I don't think that's how it works. What it actually works is like, you're going to go through a period where all the things that cannot make it into this promise are killed off.
Mm.
So like the Israelites in the desert, they weren't getting more trusting in the desert. It wasn't like, hey, you don't have enough faith, go to the desert and build your faith.
Yep.
Those literally people were being killed off in the desert. Joseph, pieces of him that needed to die were dying. David, pieces of him that needed to go away were going away. And so a lot of times the preparation of God looks more like stripping than it does addition. It looks more like removal and subtraction than it does addition. And if you don't understand that is happening, then yeah, you'll burn out in a second because you're just like, nothing I'm doing is working. Good. That's how you know. That's how you know you're in a great spot. I had a conversation with a client 2 days ago, and he's a believer, and he's like, God told me this was going to happen, and it's a big dream. And he's like, right now it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was just like, man, that's awesome. He's like, no, it's not. It's just, dude, it's awesome. Trust me. Because you know that the further away it looks like you're getting, the closer you're getting to the end of your rope, and the sooner you can hang on to God's. And that's what happened to me. And so now it's almost like a game. How when something negative happens in your life, you got to get that instinct where it's like, oh, I can't wait to see how God redeems that. That's going to be amazing. And everyone can watch this video and they can be like, yeah, that's right. 2 thumbs up, man. That's amazing. And then you lose a family member. Then you have to sit in and wrestle with it. It's easy to like a YouTube video, and then you go bankrupt. And all of a sudden, it goes from theology to obedience in your life. And when we disagree with what God said about us and what God said about our situation, we break the covenant that God has with us. We put a big wedge in the middle of it. And all of a sudden, you go from having the richest being in history with more resources than anyone, with more power than anyone. You go from having access to that person as an advocate to being at a standoff with that person. So I don't want to be there. I don't want to be in that position. I don't want to lose access to that. And it has nothing to do with my situation. It has everything to do with what I believe, with my heart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do. What do you feel like like when you are in burnout, like I feel like there's a maturing that you learn. Like I think you have gone through burnout many times, that you have gotten better at it. Obviously, you're still not perfect at it, and neither is no one, as we found out. But what are some of the byproducts, like some of the negative effects of burnout? I think we talked about this even before we started, of like people, it seems like teachers, like even people, like a lot of pastors, a lot of, like you talk about this in ministry, you were very burned out for a long time. And we just talked about on the rest episode that I've been doing stuff for 7 months straight, and I was like, maybe I'm a little bit burned out. Maybe I need to take a second. And it was, and the rest was fantastic because I got to test things, and I was like, this is awesome. And the best part that I realized about that was that when I came to the leadership, I told them, I was like, I was really grateful that, like, from you and I talking about this so much, is that I was able to come to a place of saying, hey, I think that I'm burned out, versus me doing something really stupid or making some wild mistakes and being forced into a season of rest. I've noticed that with my own life. And that was great. That was actually a really cool feeling. It's like, I got burned out and I pushed hard and I worked hard. Great. Now I need to rest.
Yeah.
But it wasn't forced on me. I actually got to ask for it. And that was the best thing ever. It completely changed my relationship with it. What would you say to maybe the younger version of me again? What do you think some of the things you would share in terms of the byproducts, how to look for it? How do you know when you're feeling it? How would have been your, maybe just some things that you remember feeling when you were like, oh man, if I had just caught this, or like in hindsight, man, if I had just seen that, or if somebody had said this, I would have like snapped in and I would have been fine, or I would have called this off, or I would have reprioritized this. Like, what would you be saying to that younger version of yourself?
The younger version, typically, you go watch the episode on fear because it's a really big one. Because you'll keep going if you're afraid. Rest requires trust. So you can't really get into a state of rest if you're afraid, if you're fearful, because then you're going to go out of self-preservation. They could just keep going on. But a lot of people they get afraid, and they think that if they take a month off, or if they take a week off, or if they try to get into real rest, then they're not going to be able to come back from it. Well, that's fear. That's not a real thing. Anything that you're afraid of, you're catastrophizing. Like, you're making it something that's not real. And you probably had some of that, and I know I had some of that. Watch for your expectations, because what burnout does at the neurological level is it reduces your expectations. And when you find yourself like lowering goals and lowering expectations, and you're not expecting something to be a blast, you're expecting it to be hard, and you're expecting your expectations change, and your expectations create the world around you. So the reason burnout is bad is because it's a cycle. Like, long-term burnout is like a cycle down. It's a spiral. You'll spiral out down. As you lose energy, if you don't fill the energy back up, all of a sudden your expectations go down. As your expectations go down, your brain goes out and creates that reality for you. Then you lose more energy, because it's harder to have good energy when things are bad than it is when things are good. Your energy goes down again. You keep going. Your expectations lower down again. This is how you can have people go from the peak of the mountain to the very bottom in 6 months, and they never recover from it. It's just because their expectations got reoriented around their lack of energy. So that's a telltale sign. Like, when you start changing around, like, what you're even shooting for. Think about the issue with the Canaanites and the spies. Two of them, they all reported the same thing technically. All 12 of them, they were like, yeah, they're big people, bad, they're going to kill us. Except for two of them had different expectations.
Correct.
So when they interpreted the data, their expectations were different. So you have a kind of a fiduciary type of obligation to just force your expectations to match whatever you feel like God has told you to do. When things are going good, expectations are here. When things are going bad, expectations are here. When we change our expectations, we kind of get into like a really blind spiral where we just start going downhill. How hard is it for you to go to a party if you believe that you're going to get like murdered at that party?
Pretty impossible.
You're not going to the party.
You can't.
You can't do it. How hard is it for you to get up and speak on stage if you feel like you're going to make a fool of yourself and people are going to laugh at you?
Can't do it.
Can't do it. How hard is it for you to start the business if you're expecting the economy to be really bad and you're going to kill the business?
It's just not going to work.
So it's not even, it's less of an issue of like, it's not a discipline issue. It's like an expectations thing. So you have to match your expectations around into, so this is a long-term view. Burnout just introduces doubt into the equation and disappointment into the equation, and that doubt and disappointment lower your expectations.
Gotcha. Let's say, let me frame it this way. let's say 28-year-old version of you, 27-year-old Taylor walks in the room.
Okay.
He walks in the room. He is frustrated. He barely wants to hear what you have to say. He's exhausted. The week's been crazy. He's like, dude, I don't even want people to talk to me. How are you talking to 28-year-old Taylor fuming in this chair right now?
Do you want to be 28-year-old Taylor for me?
Absolutely.
All right. Here's how it would go. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm great. I'm doing great.
Are you burning out or what?
I don't think so. I think I need to probably get a little bit of sleep and I'll be fine. I'm good.
When's the last time you got sleep?
I slept last night probably like 5-6 hours.
Did it work?
I mean, yeah, I got through the day, but probably wouldn't hurt to have a couple more, you know.
So you think sleeping a little bit more is going to fix your lack of enthusiasm for your entire life?
Do you think do I not seem excited?
Mm-mm.
No.
Mm-mm.
Why?
Do you feel excited?
I mean, yeah, I've looked at my vision board this morning. I went over my morning formula and still sounds fun. What? Why? Why are you asking these questions?
Because you're not excited.
What do you think's happening?
About you not being excited?
Yeah,
Are you excited?
I think so. You don't think so?
I think you're burned out. I think you're burning out.
How do you know?
Because you're running out of energy. You're sleeping, it's not working. You're taking weekends, it's not working. Your protocols aren't working. What are you most excited about right now? And before you answer, if it's something external, you're burned out. Go for it.
I'm pretty excited to go to bed.
Okay.
That sounds great. That sounds like...
And that doesn't sound like burnout to you?
I guess I could see
What's
it.
the biggest thing in your world right now? I get to go to sleep tonight.
Sounds way more fun than anything. I don't want to be around anybody right now.
And you don't think you're burned out?
I probably am.
Oh, you probably are?
Probably, yeah. What do you suggest? I already took a vacation last week. I feel just as crappy today.
Why are you even working? What's the point?
I guess that's a good question.
Go find that. That's going to fix your burnout.
Got it.
Go find that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you can't find that, it means you don't have enough energy to even figure out what you want. And taking a vacation can be restful or it can be exhausting. Which one was it?
Exhausting. I felt like I had to plan everything. I had a bunch of stuff I had to go do.
Okay, so it wasn't a vacation.
No.
It was just work away from home.
Yep.
So you need a real vacation.
Okay.
What sounds really fun to do on vacation?
Reading.
Reading, sleeping,
Walking by myself.
waking up late,
Yep.
doing nothing or doing a lot?
Doing nothing that I've been doing and just being able to read and just chill out and not have anything that I have to go do or have to go take care of.
When's the last time you got that vacation?
Probably 3 years ago.
Cool. You need like 7 days of that.
Cool.
Yeah. And on day 7, you'll probably start having vision again and enthusiasm again.
Sweet.
This is the problem. So let's hop out of that. Like, the problem is like you weren't even accepting that you were burned out. So how can you fix something if you won't accept it?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't even want to entertain the idea that something is happening, you can't fix the thing itself. So we got a lot of burned out leaders. It's like, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. No, you're not. You're just a liar.
Yeah.
You're just dishonest with yourself.
Where do you think that culture comes from in the first place? Why do you think
Pride.
people are not honest?
Pride.
Yeah.
Because we feel like to not be okay, there's something wrong with us. That's not true.
Where does that come from?
Pride.
Yeah.
Comparison.
Sure.
It all comes back down to, at the end of the day, it all comes back down to pride and self-reliance and comparison and all these things. But if there are, yeah, dude, if you've asked me before, you okay? I'm like, not so good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an honesty there.
Mm-hmm.
When there's honesty, there's always a solution. When there's no honesty, there's no solution.
Correct.
So this is why I'm so hardcore about like, yo, tell God what you actually feel. I was talking with someone on the phone the other day and he's going through a really rough situation. And he was like, I feel like I've even in my frustration, I've I've been respectful of God's sovereignty through that process. I'm like, bro, you don't care. God does not need you to respect his sovereignty. He's not sitting there like, I really hope that David respects my omniscience in this season. He doesn't care. God's not interested in that. God doesn't need you to hang your hat up on that. What God loved about David is that David was like, yo, why are you doing this? Answer me, please, please. Why are you trying to hurt me?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you trying to, like, God's interested in honesty. So even that with the person I was talking to was like, I understand what you're saying. Translation, religion. That's the basic translation. Your relationship with God is boiled down to what you know about God and feeling like God needs you to say those things to him when you talk to him. No. Now, I'm not saying that you should stand on stage in your pulpit and be like, yo, I am upset with God. And no. This is called relationship for a reason. It's in the private place. But if someone's not honest with God, it's usually because they're not being honest in general. Mm-hmm. They're just not honest. So I don't think you can fix something that you won't acknowledge. And we fight so hard to just be accepted by our peers and accepted by our boss. And so we don't want to be honest with it. So I'm constantly asking people on my team, how do you feel? How many times have I asked you this?
So much.
How do you feel?
Yeah.
If too many days go by and you're like, I'm feeling great. I'm going to start being like, everything Jake says is probably filtered through like him trying to give the right answer.
Or sometimes I'm trying to get to a place where I don't want to agree with that. And I refuse to be like upset about this or that. So sometimes I'll be in that state where I'm like, I am good. Like I have enough things I'm grateful for. I'm great. Like there's times, like I'll give you an example. I've had a lot of times where people are like, you're having a bad day, aren't you? I'm like, I'm having a bad day. And then I'll sit there and I'll be like, like my day could have been way worse. This person in this country went through that. And I'm like, God, you're amazing. And then I'm like, thank you for this problem. And I mean it with all my heart. I'm like, this is amazing. Thank you for this problem. I'm like, this is the best problem ever. I'm not eating out of a trash can. I'm like, and people are like, Jake, what is your problem? I'm like, you don't understand. I've had an amazing day. That is not me every day. But on the days that I remember, sometimes I'll be like, how's your day been? I've been like, for me, it was kind of really crappy. Like it was super bad. And this is what I don't, because I'm very prone to like, I do not like victim mindsets about people ever. So when people are like, oh, my day was horrible. I'm like, you just don't have perspective. Like when was the last time you went and just looked at what a missionary had to do in Africa today to take care of the village? It's not to minimize your problem. It's not that your problems aren't real, but it's really healthy. It's just like when you feel like garbage and you're tired and then you eat junk food because you think that's going to make you less tired. It's like, bro, it's only making you more tired. Eat some more healthy food. It'll wake you up. It will feel good. You won't want it, but it will make you feel good. That's what I'll do in terms of inducing perspective. And I'm like, today is not as good as my best days ever, but it's still a good day. Like I do not want to be a person who complains, and I do not want to play the victim when somebody else had a way more difficult card. And I'm not going to minimize that I had some problems and there were some bad circumstances that came along.
Okay. I'll accept that. It's inferior though.
Why?
Because if you compare to get yourself at the bottom, out of the bottom, you'll compare when you're at the top.
Could you give me an example real fast?
Yeah. How's your day going? Well, I'm not a missionary somewhere else comparison. Mm-hmm. How's your day going at the top? Well, I don't make as much as Bill Gates. So it's just a strategy that just doesn't necessarily translate to
I don't use the
holistic.
frame at the top as I do at the bottom.
You do.
I get that.
No, you do.
Okay.
Yeah. If you use it at the bottom, you use it at the top. You might be less aware of it, but that's not how it works.
Gotcha.
Yeah. You're going to use the same frame. It's the spectrum. We're just gonna whatever we use to fix perspective is going to be used pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
So, and you can, by the way, you can say you're having a bad day without complaining.
Yeah.
Here's how it would work. How's your day going? Oh man, I can't wait to have more energy.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't complain, but I just communicated that I'm feeling a little bit down on energy.
Yeah.
And the only thing is like, bro, at what point does that end? Like, how's your marriage going? Well, I didn't cheat and sleep with another woman last night. Where does that end?
Yeah.
It's a temporary reduction of like bad perspective, but it's got long tail consequences on it. They can hurt you.
I just like being delusionally grateful sometimes though.
Okay.
And that'll keep me out of certain states because I'm like, I do not want to be that person that complains, and I will address a problem head on.
Okay.
I can do both. That's why I feel like certain conversations with you, I'm like, dude, this is great. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Okay, now let's fight. Let's take care of this real quick.
Fight.
You've seen me do this. Like when we argue, there's
Yeah.
times that we've argued, and I'm like, bro, this is such a good conversation. And you're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, this is a fantastic conversation. Do you realize how much better our friendship's going to be in the next 3 months after we've talked this out? And you're like, what's your deal? And I'm like, okay, let's come back in a frame. Let's argue. But I'm like, imagine 3 months from now. Because if the devil's like, oh, what if I can get them to like not be friends or whatever, then he wins. You see what I'm saying?
I do. If you like that frame, I'll let you keep it.
I love the frame, and I'm open to your thoughts.
No, I'll let you keep it until it no longer works, and then I'll
Okay.
give you the right one.
Cool. I like that frame.
Yeah,
It's
I mean that's the
very
easiest way to do it
security frame.
because you like that frame. It feels good for you right now,
Yeah,
and so yeah, keep using it. There are levels to this though,
I bet.
and real advancement comes from nuanced acuity, from the acuity of how you're feeling. So when you use a blunt instrument rather than a scalpel, you're going to get different layer of accuracy. So that's a very blunt instrument, and it works for you right now. When you start getting into like, okay, like you got some things you need to fix as a father. You're not being a great dad here. Well, my dad wasn't around at all, so I'm better than them. All of a sudden, the frame's not effective. It's a blunt instrument, and it can be used just as effectively to suppress areas of growth as it can to reduce ungrateful behavior.
I will look for that. I haven't noticed myself doing that. I will usually I'll like separate the frame. If it's like, oh, I'm having a bad day, I will separate it to this is 100% my fault, and I won't compare it against somebody else because that if somebody does that to me, I get pissed. So, but I will take 100% responsibility even for things I didn't do, and then I won't because I'm like, I don't care. Like this, if you and I have an issue, and I'm like, well, that friend over there sucks.
You're apples to oranges though, sticking apples. Because you having a bad day and me and you having an issue are orange, apple.
Okay.
Stay in the same thing. What if you're having a bad day because there's something you need to fix? You won't catch it. Because you won't even acknowledge that it's there. You're not a missionary somewhere overseas, so the day's great. You know.
I'm gonna chew on it. I'm gonna watch this segment back. You're welcome to everybody else that got to learn from this. I'm gonna go watch this back and I'll sit on it and we'll talk about it later. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, sit on it. So wrapping up, is burnout a sin? Chronic burnout, I think, is indicative of a bad relationship with helper, with the Holy Spirit is your helper.
Yeah.
And it really shows that there's an assignment on your life. So when you have like chronic burnout, you're perpetually fatiguing. It's a good and a bad sign. It's a good sign because you're probably called to do some really good stuff. And then the assignment against that is you are just so busy because you're so distracted that's the only way to stop you. That's the only way to keep you from your mission is for you to be distracted in 1,000 different fires. Ways to neutralize this would be obviously prioritizing day 7. It's the rest. It's like, are you in a day 7 season? Are you in a day 6 season? Right before day? Are you in a day 4 season? So you put this together. Like day 1 is the beginning. Day 6 is right at the ends. Where are you in that spectrum? Because if you know, so Nehemiah, for instance, he put together these people. The Bible says he rebuilt the walls in 52 days. 52. Which the scholars say it should have taken months to years to rebuild it. How did he do it? He used other people. So he built a team around him, and he started where the areas were the most broken. So there was a strategy at play. You better believe that he knew, like, he was tracking things through, like, this is where we're going next. Like, day 3, day 5, they all feel different. Day 1 is going to feel so amazing because you're full of energy and enthusiasm, and the vision is big. Day 4 and 5 and 6, when you've got to start watching yourself because you're starting to run out of energy. You're starting to get into a position where the work is almost complete, but it's not yet complete. And that's where I think people get robbed because they get so busy that they skip over day 7 and start over at day 1. Doesn't work that way. It's never going to work that way. You're always going to have to give space. This is the way that you were set up.
And this is what you were talking about with Dan Martell, where you're like, you'll start something like 75 hard and you'll start it and it feels great. And then like halfway through, you don't care. It's like, you don't feel like it. And just because you feel something doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it.
Yep.
Because that endurance is what's supposed to get you to the end. You're like, and you feel accomplished because you said that you were going to do it and you pushed through it. So it's like, there is that. That's actually interesting. We're pointing back in the middle. It's not, oh, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not going to do it. It's, I committed to doing this and there's no reason why I shouldn't, and I need to keep going.
Yep. And be careful with your commitments because you're going to have to see it through.
Yes.
And if at any point along these day 1 through 6, at any point, and these are not physical days, these are like tranches of a season. At any point along the way, if you forget why you committed to it, done.
Yep.
You're toast. You won't make it past that, bro. Like, it's not going to happen. If you forget the reason why you committed to something, your energy is not going to rally at all. You're not going to be able to rally. So that's why the why is so important, keeping that front and center. And then another thing to think about in this regards is let's just reframe it. If you're like, yo, I'm watching this, it's a great episode. I've never really felt burnout. Well, bro, your life is a joke. Sorry. I mean, it's like, you have so much potential and you have never tapped the edges of your capacity. Enjoy Disneyland. You're a kid. Go do something real.
Yeah.
Go actually push yourself. Go actually build something worth building. Go feel what it feels like to be a player.
Yes.
Because every player that I've ever met, they've all experienced this feeling of like, today's going to be a good day, but I don't feel motivated. I'm a little tired, but I'm going to rally through. This is how it works. Then this is specifically for people who are nonprofits or ministries or whatever. You can get so busy giving that you never put yourself into positions to receive. And so this will cause burnout as well. You're not receiving anything. You're not being filled up anywhere.
Yep.
So sometimes, I'm sure this happens with Blackberry, but I know Belonging, like there are sometimes people will come on like a Tuesday night just because they're pastors and they never get to worship, really, you know?
Yeah.
Does that ever happen with Blackberry? People just stop in. They just want to receive for once. Like they just want to fill up.
I did that a month ago with Tim.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I was like, it's a difference between just being a part of a worship service and actually being able to receive. And literally that took the guy on stage to literally say, get your hands out in a posture. And I had to sit there and I was like, I don't want to receive. And I was like, whoa, this is not good. Really unhealthy.
It's because you're using blunt instrument frames to...
Yeah, and then I was able to finally receive for like 3 hours, and I was like, I felt like I was on fire.
You're going to text me tomorrow if you watch this and be like, bro, you were right. Teach me that frame.
I bet.
So yeah, you put yourself into positions to receive, and I've got really good friends who, Dan's one of them, who like, dude, he fills me up. He just recharges me, and in fact, like he compliments me in certain things that I've never thought of before. And I'm like, man, that actually feels really good. Thank you for saying that. Because I feel like I'm constantly in this world where I'm like empowering other people.
Yeah.
And very rarely is that empowering. Sometimes people send me a message and they'll say, I'm sure you get this all the time, but today's DMM like really filled me up. And I'm like, dude, I don't get this all the time.
Wow.
Actually. People tag me and stuff. But as a leader, it's not that you need it. It's just that like, this is why I told people at the beginning, like text someone right now. Text someone that you're thinking about. Just whatever hits your mind, text them how amazing they are. You never know like when that person is going to be feeling like they're on day 6 and they're at the bottom. And you text them and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I can't do it. Yeah. God will use you sometimes to empower other people who need to be lifted up. They're not receiving. Too much giving, not enough receiving is not a great thing. And then the only other thing that I'll say is, this is from a belief architecture. We talk about this, but sometimes we get trapped in our intellect, and our intellect is burning through glucose. It's just like constantly it's fatiguing us. When my aura ring, like when I was speaking and talking, it's like, yo, you've worked out 20 times today. Because my brain is going the whole time.
Really?
It's just, my heart rate's up, my brain's working.
Wow.
The brain burns through freaking resources like nothing else in the body.
Wow.
If you can get out of that for a second and actually tap into future state vision. We just did this. I ran a sales meeting this morning. Our sales manager is sick for one of the businesses. So I hopped in, and what did we do? Visualization. You've got to feel what it's like to be at your vision. And when you do that, what happens is there's biology in this, but more than anything else, it's spiritual. What happens in the spiritual world is you will actually receive energy from feeling like your vision is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this belief. It retilts you back to a belief system that's healthy. So I think this is important as well, whether you're running a business or whether you're a manager or running a ministry. It's like, what has been put on your heart to do? And when's the last time you've really sat in that and visualized it and seen it in your mind and felt what it's like to be obedient and actually get to the promised land? Bro, if all 12 of these spies would have visualized what God had said, all 12 would have come back with the report that was good.
Mm-hmm.
All of them. The problem is that 10 didn't, and they just looked at data and intellect. And we'll never stop talking about it because it's such a human nature thing. It's not that the Israelites were dumb. It's that they were just like us.
Yep.
They were the exact same types of people. Like, they just thought through facts and figures and data and intellect. And there's a realm that's higher than that. But you'll never get to it if you're fatigued and burning out. So, anything else to add?
No. What would you say to people watching the show?
Scale of 1 to 10, how do you rate this? Because sometimes you're like, bro, that was too much in the clouds.
Really?
Sometimes, yeah.
I thought this was very high on the scale for me. It was great.
Okay, dude.
Really
like
enjoyed
9.5, 8. What do you think?
I'd give it a 9.
Let's see. What do you think? Put your rating in the chat. Tell us. Some people are going to be like, actually, it was a 2, bro. And we're just going to have to receive it. We'll just receive it, and we'll pray for your soul. That's what we'll do. Thanks for watching this. If you have questions about this, let us know. If you have any topics you want us to talk about, let us know. And we love you.